right, the problem is that I can't tell if you can tell that my glasses are not clean on the camera because I can't see because of the glare. Anyway, hello, cheers, welcome. It's taking longer than I thought. Welcome to my April wrap-up. All right, it's editing Alyssa. I look frightful, but this video is very late. For some reason, I decided this was overwhelming to edit, and I got it in my head that it was overwhelming, so I'm sorry. April is late. You know what's going to be overwhelming? May. Anyway, enjoy. We're in a new filming location. We are in my bookish command center. If you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram. I have a mic now. Like, I am becoming legit. So anyway, so I have a desk now in my bedroom that is going to be my workstation for all things bookish content. I'm going to get back into writing. This year I'm going to finish that first book that I didn't finish last year because life, and then I got injured, and then but we're gonna do it. So this is gonna be my new little space for all of my podcasting over on Stereo with Naomi, and doing the Passing Reading Project with all of my TBR Lowdown content, all of my Nerdy Nurse Reads content. It's all gonna happen here. This is where the magic happens, and I'm super excited to be filming my first thing here. So let's get into it because I do have quite a few things that I read in April. And okay, so the tallies. I read 24 books in April, and overall it was a really good month, but we're gonna jump right in there. My first book of the month, which was The Left-Handed Booksellers of London, which I absolutely adored. The audiobook for this was fantastic, one. Number two, this is so fast-paced. It's like an urban fantasy with an alternate reality sort of thing going on, where there's the world we all know, and then there's this world of magic that sort of is underneath, and you have these right-handed and left-handed booksellers, and they kind of control the access between these realms. And there's this girl who is basically trying to find her dad because her mom's kind of like not there, and never really tells her anything, and she goes off to London when she's 18 to find her dad. And then this whole adventure ensues where she gets wrapped up into this magical world and figures out who her dad is. And it is just so flipping amazing, and more people need to talk about this book. I just feel like I don't see it enough. I see a lot of other things on Bookstagram and BookTube, but people don't talk about this enough. It's so good. I am too lazy to go through all my star ratings, so it's good. Read it. Next was A Night Without Armor, which I believe is this one. So yes, A Night Without Armor, which is a collection of poetry from good old Jewel. Those of the elder millennial world will remember Jewel. I don't know if you were that kind of girl when you were growing up. Jewel was like the I'm not like other girls boho edition, like artsy. I play guitar and I drink beers and I live in my car and I write poetry, and it's just, so I picked up her poetry collection because I saw it going around, and I'll be honest, I thought this was new because I had never seen it before, and it just sort of popped up on my, I think it popped up on my Amazon of all things, like it was a brand new book, and I was like, okay, so I bought it. And it's just kind of middle of the road. It's poetry, and when I read her notes at the end, it made a lot more sense to me why she chose some of the things that she chose to put in here. Some of these poems are really flipping good. There's a poem about a guy who goes to Vietnam and comes back that's just kind of like in her town in Alaska, and it's really sad and really well done. And then there's other poems that are really rough and not very good, and when you read her actual, it's either her at the end or she has a foreword, I can't remember where in the book she does it, but she talks about the collection, and she says that she kept in a lot of things because she wanted to show everything. The point was to be like, show her good work and her bad work kind of all together. So it made some sense, but there were a lot of hits and misses throughout the whole collection of poetry. It could have been narrowed down and been better. Grimshaw was a good one. Sorry, I just turned to it. Like it's just very good. There's a lot of stuff about the people in her town in Alaska that's really good. It's all right. It's middle of the road. Like, if you're not into poetry, don't read it. If you're into poetry and you happen to find it, give it a try. But I don't think anybody needs to run out and get it. My buddy read 1984 by George Orwell. This is like your original OG dystopian novel, and this is really freaking good. And we knew it was going to be really good. Winston kind of frustrates me. The ending frustrates me, and I understand why that's the way the ending, but it still frustrates me. Because I'm sorry, 2 + 2 does not equal 5. But let me tell you, you have to read this book. If you've never read this book, if you were supposed to read it in high school and you didn't because you were like, why? This is boring. I get you. I understand you. I don't know why they make us read these things when we're too young to really, truly understand them. So good. Read this book. 5 flipping stars. Amazing. I read Black Sun on my Kindle, and I also listened to it. I had an advanced listening copy that I never got to, and I finally read Black Sun as a buddy read. And I really wanted to like this book. So hard did I want to like this book. And it was just okay. The world building was a little... It's a very complex world. It's set in a pre-Columbian sort of fantasy land. And you've got this crow guy who's blind, and he's basically seeking revenge sort of on these other people. It's hard for me to understand because it's really complex. It took me until about halfway through the book to even understand who these people were. And then there's this one sea captain lady whose name, I don't remember anybody's names, but this is how memorable the book is. There's this sea captain lady who may or may not be a mermaid, Shagger, I don't know. She's got something going on, but she's kind of interesting. There's this priestess lady that's very not interesting. She's super boring. But they live in this world where there's no genders, which is really cool. And then there's this crow guy, and they're all kind of coming together to this point, and it has multiple timelines and multiple points of views. It gets really confusing, which is fine. I read a lot of fantasy like that. My problem was most of these characters were really two-dimensional. Like, they did not have enough depth for me to really engage with them. I might read book 2 to see if there's greater character development in book 2 that makes me connect to them more. Also, I want to see more about that sea captain lady, like, because I actually do really genuinely like her as a character, and she was the only one that I thought was very well rounded, and the others just needed some more work. So hopefully they get more work done to them and they're better going forward in the series. But the first one was just kind of, I was expecting more. So our TBR lowdown pick of the month was Opal and Nev. This was fantastic. It is sort of like Daisy Jones and the Six in the sense that it's told, the narrative style is interview for a magazine or a newspaper, something like that. And you have all these different characters giving the story about an event, and it's set around a music group. That's about the only thing that's the same. This is a lot more politically driven. I think this has a lot more momentum behind it. This is a lot more powerful and engaging. I really enjoyed Opal and Nev. I did, of course, read Daisy Jones and the Six finally, because I couldn't read this without reading Daisy Jones because everybody made so many comparisons between the two. And though I really liked Daisy Jones, I do not like this as much as Evelyn Hugo. I do not like it as much as I like Opal and Nev. And I honestly feel like I wonder what my thoughts on Daisy Jones would have been if I had read it when it originally came out, because everybody has told me how fantastic it is. I've read other stories like this that are better in my humble opinion. And I wonder if I would have a different impression of this, if I would be more enthralled, more at the level of my friends. But the fact of the matter is, this is great. This is great. They're both great. Read them. You're not going to go wrong with either of them. I just prefer this to this, if you're going to make me choose. I also just don't think they're that similar. But since they keep getting lumped together, if you made me choose one, I'm choosing Opal and Nev. Opal's just freaking amazing. I read Pachinko with Naomi. She was rereading it, and I read it. I feel like there we go. You can kind of see it now. This follows the story of a Korean family, particularly the matriarch of that family, in Japan in the early 1900s and follows her, basically her lifetime and her family. It's incredibly sad. It's incredibly well done. I will read whatever Minji Lee writes because it's just so good. I really, really enjoyed this. And it was not what I was expecting, in the sense that I had expected it to be more about Korea, not about Koreans in Japan. So it was a little bit more actual Japanese history through the eyes of the Koreans that lived there and were, I don't know if I want to say oppressed as much as they were hated on for centuries. But anyway, they were centuries, or at least for years and years and years, decades and upon decades. But it's really, really good. The audiobook's good. The only thing I will say about the story is that it can be a little abrupt. Like, when a bad thing happens, it'll be like, this bad thing happens, chapter ends, new part, like next part of the book, 10 years later. And you're like, but you get like broadsided by some things, and then the story keeps going, which is just a really interesting way to tell a story. But I really did enjoy that. And I really want to read Free Food for Millionaires and literally anything else she writes. It's so good. I have a couple more things that I listened to that I borrowed. I borrowed a copy of Once Upon an Eid, and I listened to that, and it's a collection of short stories around Eid, which is the celebration at the end of Ramadan. And since it was Ramadan in April, I thought it was perfect pairing. And these stories are so stinking cute. They're definitely for younger people, but it's for anybody. But they're really accessible because they're written for younger persons. I would say probably like tweens, and it's just, the stories are wonderful. They show you different ways in which different Muslim groups, cultures, backgrounds celebrate Eid, and it's all about like hope and generosity and kindness and celebration and reflection, and they're so good. And it's such a quick read that just like find yourself a copy and listen to it. I think it's on Scribd. It was at my library. It's really good. The next thing that I listened to was Burnt Sugar, which is a women's prize long list or something like that. And I don't know, Naomi was reading it. She read it. My friend Naomi, Book Lady Reads, she does the Passing Reading Project with me. She was reading it and she said, Alyssa, somebody has to read this book. Like, this book is so screwed up. Somebody has to read it. And I read it, and it's weird. Like, it's a weird book. It follows this lady. She lives in India. She's Indian. Her mom's nuts, and like for a while, well, her mom's like weird. I'm not gonna call her nuts, but her mom's like a weirdo. She's a little out there, and she is now older. She and her daughter don't have a very good relationship. Her dad's remarried with some other lady and has like a kid, and they're estranged sort of. And then her mom ends up with dementia. So she starts having to take care of her mom, and like they don't have a good relationship. So they're going back and forth between like reality, like today, and like their past relationship, and kind of how this tension was created. And the mom has made some really interesting life choices. The daughter makes some really interesting life choices, let me tell you. Some of the things that she says, you're like, what? It's worth a read. I warned you, some of it's very strange and questionable life decisions. If you don't like books where people make really questionable life decisions, don't read it. But if you don't mind it, give it a try. It's great. It's a weird freaking book. Read it with somebody else so you can talk about it while you're going through it, because it's freaking weird. One of my nonfictions for the month was The New Age of Empire by Kahindi Andrews. I wanted to get that right. I watched him on a panel. There's this, I've talked about before on my YouTube channel. There's a YouTube channel called Intelligence Squared, and they do a lot of debates. It's a British thing, and he is a professor, I think in Manchester and Birmingham. And he was on this, the panel was something about, essentially about is wokeness and safe spaces and all of this, is this hurting children, or is this hurting the younger generations, or is it helping it? And there were people that were two older white men that were pro, and then there was a younger lady and this young black man who were sort of I'm phrasing this really poorly, but essentially there was like a side that was like, yes, it is hurting them, and no, it is not. And he was on the no, it is not. But what frustrated me the most, it was a very interesting debate. And I think that there were pieces that each side said that made some sense. And that there's probably a nice middle ground for finding, like, you know, whatever. But that's neither here nor there in this discussion. But this one panelist, he like never really got to speak. And every time he did speak, I was like, I want to hear more from him. And he just never really got the floor. This woman and the other two panelists just kept taking over. And I was like, screw this. And I went online and I was like, does he have any books? And he did. So this is like, I think his newest book. I think it came out this year or last year or late last year. And it is really, really, really good. Did I say what it is? The New Age of Empire. So this is about colonization and the real like global roots of racism and the effects that colonization has had and how many hands are in this pot and how big the impact of all of these past decisions has been and continues to be on many places. It is really, really powerful. It doesn't pull any punches, okay? So he's very abrupt and very more like a Malcolm X to a Martin Luther King, you know, tactics-wise, the way that they're talking about things. And I think what I liked the most about this is, one, he doesn't give anybody any solutions, because he even says at the end, he's like, I don't have any solutions for this other than complete and total, like, upheaval and, like, you know, redoing of things. And which is a strategy. And two, this looks at things globally. I think in America we get so focused on America and we're so focused on ourselves and we forget that there is a world outside of us. Yes. Are we a huge part of the reason why there is systemic racism in the world? Yes. Is there other pieces? Are there other pieces to this discussion? Yes. And there are impacts that go beyond just what we see here in America. There are things that are happening globally that need to be discussed. So this was just a really, and it's not even that long. It is so good. I suggest you get it. He actually narrates the audiobook too. So if you like when authors narrate their own audiobooks, give that a shot. I love a good author narrated audiobook. I read two collections, or this is to go along with the author narrating their own works. Nikki Giovanni, I have a good cry, and I found the audiobook of this, which actually also includes another collection of her poems called Love Poems. And these were really, really, really good. She has been a poet for many, many years, and they're really, really good. The first collection I really liked. This second collection, A Good Cry, I liked even better, especially in the audiobook, because she would stop and give a little bit of background on things. And there's some really lovely poems about Maya Angelou sort of near the end, especially about Maya Angelou's passing, because the two of them were quite good friends. So it's really good. This is like classic American contemporary African American poetry. It is just good. It is a lovely collection. I would read other things by her too, so I enjoyed that. That was a good time. I read If I Tell You the Truth, and I also got Jasmine Kerr's this is her first book, this is her second book. I got this in an unplugged book box, and then I ordered this one after I read this because it was just so stinking good. If I Tell You the Truth actually follows one of the stories. There's a little novella short story in here, and this is the greater story of, extrapolated out. But it follows a mother and daughter in Canada, and the mother ends up going there for college. She goes there pregnant and ends up becoming an illegal alien because she can't there's nowhere for her to go if she goes back to India. So she stays with the people that she lived with in Canada when she went for school, and she raises her child. So it follows the mother and the child. It talks a lot about immigration. It talks a lot about racial issues within Canada specifically, but with their Punjabi and that struggle and the discrimination that they experience. It talks about being a young kid and family secrets and sexual assault. There's a trigger for that, and just overcoming that. And there's so many things that are in here, and it's so good. And it's a mix of prose. I'm doing a really shitty job of describing it, I feel like, but it's a mix of prose and poetry and artwork, and it's really good. And this is her mostly poetry collection, When You Ask Me Where I'm Going, and it's just so powerful and so moving. And I feel like if you're a young woman, especially a young woman who's going through anything that makes you feel alienated for any reason because of your whatever, like pick a thing, and this is a fantastic collection to read. My brother is calling me. We're gonna ignore him. This is a fantastic collection of poems. They're mostly about discrimination that is very specific to the author and her particular group of Muslims, but there's a lot to be gleaned from here about about finding your power. It's really beautiful, and you're actually going to learn a lot too about things you might not know about, or you may know a little about, but you want to know more. She's so fantastic. I have a new author crush. I'm just going off on a tangent now because my brother distracted me. I finished Passing, which I have a whole project on this that I'm doing with Naomi, the Book Lady Reads. We are breaking this down over on Stereo and on our TBR Lowdown Twitch. So we already broke down part 1, so we're going to be breaking down parts 2 and 3. So follow me on Stereo. Go follow us on Twitch. This is a spoilerful breakdown. It is so good that we are dissecting this. This is not a review that this is a dissection. My review of this book it's fantastic. Nella Larson is amazing. It is to the detriment of the world that she only wrote 3 books, because she is a fantastic author. And this book is succinct and beautiful and perfect, and we are really enjoying breaking this down. We spent 2 hours talking about part 2 and part 1, and the only reason why we stopped was because we had to get on a different live stream. So we had to stop and get off of this. But it's so good. I hope you follow along. If you miss it, you can go backtrack. I've been putting them on my channel, so you can find them on my channel. I'll try to link them somewhere, but it's really good. Pick yourself up a copy. It's like copy. It's like 100 pages. Just read it. You won't be sorry. It's written in the 20s. It follows 3 different women who, well, mainly 2, but there's a 3rd one, who pass for white, and it's very complex and in its simplicity, and it is so stinking good. I have so many buddy reads. I buddy read Ruin of Kings with Emma from TBR Lowdown, and because the 4th book in this series just came out, and Tor actually sent me a copy of it, and thank you, Tor. I'm really excited, so we were like, we gotta start this series. So this is book 1. This is a very weird fantasy, is what I'm gonna tell you. It has 2 different points of view, and they're in 2 different timelines that eventually converge, right? But it is freaking weird. Like, it is confusing in the most engaging way possible. Every time I would get comfortable and be like, I finally understand exactly what's going on, she would bamboozle me, to quote Emma, and I would be confused again until the very end when I was like, oh my God. So and I still need to read the next book because I'm like, oh my God. But I'm in the middle of this 50 books in a month thing, and we're going to take a break for a second. I want to savor it. This is like a savoring book. And it's not a good book to read with other books. Like, you really want to focus on it. But boy, is it good. Basically, you have this guy who grows up poor and has like this adopted dad. He's an orphan, and he's been living in this whorehouse, and his dad's like a musician and blind, and this kid's been like stealing stuff. He's got this like weird necklace thing. He's got something going on. He can see beyond the veil and all this stuff. Like, there's something going on with him. He's extra special, right? But nobody really knows anything about him. Nobody tells him anything. But then eventually his story keeps coming out, because through many events, he cannot avoid who he really is. People finally figure out who he is. He starts to find out that he is of higher birth than he ever thought. That's not a good thing. It is filled with magic. It is filled with political intrigue. It is filled with magical beasts. There's even like people who are mimics and can be anybody else. So you're like constantly unsure if what's happening is really happening, because is it the mimic or is it the real person? It is really well done. We thoroughly enjoyed reading this, and I really think that more people need to be talking about it. It's another one where I'm like, why are more people not talking about this? I went on a walk and I listened to a dramatization of Taming of the Shrew. It's my favorite Shakespeare play because I think it's the most accessible, and it makes you chuckle, or makes me chuckle every time. If you never know, it's a little bit, it doesn't age well, but a lot of Shakespeare doesn't age well in the sense of like, it's not great to women, but like, or Jews, or really anybody who isn't a white man in English, but it is still funny, and it is still well written, and there's still a lot to enjoy with Shakespeare. And if you don't know the story, essentially there's this man who has 2 daughters, and if you've ever seen 10 Things I Hate About You, this is the book. But he's got 2 daughters, one's sweet and beautiful and younger, and everybody wants her, but nobody can marry her until the elder daughter gets married. And the elder daughter isn't ugly by any means, but man, is she a bitch. And so the father's like, nobody can marry Bianca until Catherine gets married, which is difficult to do. But then you have this guy who comes, and he's like, well, you've got these 2 guys who come, and like one's like, I'm in love with Bianca, and they sort of, there's a lot of like role switching, and they switch roles, and like the rich guy becomes the servant, and the servant becomes the rich guy, so that the rich guy can court Bianca as her teacher, and so he can sneak in there and court her under her dad's nose. And then Petruchio shows up, and he sees Kate, and he's like, oh, I'll marry her. Like, I can marry her. She's fine. I'll break her. So then there's like all these weird, funny moments, and the stuff that doesn't really age well is that Petruchio kind of like gaslights the hell out of Kate, and like it's really emotionally and mentally abusive to break her down and get her to be a good wife. But it's all in good fun, and it's all because he really does love her. But like it's funny and also problematic as heck, but it's a good time. I still enjoy it. I think the comedy in it is actually really good. Some of the other pieces, like 21st century women, are probably gonna be like, but it's classic. It's Shakespeare. He didn't know any better. I have a few here that are all gonna be a part of different reading vlogs. We can start with Denim Vipers, which has its own reading vlog plus reactionary discussion with my 2 friends from TBR Lowdown, who you've heard throughout this whole video, Naomi and Emma. They read this as well, and we discuss our thoughts on it, and there's a little bit of public health information as well about things you should and shouldn't do with your lady parts. Anyway, it is a book. We're not going to talk anymore about that. I'd like to sort of forget that I read that. And then I have a reading vlog for pretty much everything else on this list. So we're just going to sort of briefly talk about what I've read, and there'll be more in-depth stuff in this reading vlog that's coming out hopefully soon. I don't know. I have a couple more books to read. 5 Days at Memorial is a nonfiction book that centers around the 5 Days at Memorial Hospital during Katrina, where they were cut off from everything, and the hospital was flooding, and they had no power, and they had all these people and animals and all kinds of stuff like in the hospital with them, and people were dying, and people were showing up from the streets, and people are shooting, and like the staff members are arming themselves. It was this book made me cry and then made me really angry. So it's set in 2 parts. The first part is very hard to read, and it is about the days in the hospital during Katrina, and then the second part is about the fallout of, and especially particularly around one of the physicians and the decisions that this physician made during the time. And it is one heck of a book, and I think that there are lots of people that would like this book. I really liked it. It was particularly hard to read as a health professional, but it's not for everybody because it's there's a lot of triggers. There's a lot in there. It's really hard. It's not for everybody, but it was a really good read. I'm kind of glad I read it, but I'm also like, it's hard. We're going to talk about this. I read the Pisces, which was just weird. It was okay. Like, I think it started out really good, and then it kind of like got a little meh in the middle, but it's all right. It was fine. I thought it was going to be like my favorite book of the year when I was starting it because it was really funny and quirky and different. But like your main character is, you know, your typical girl who doesn't know what's going on with her life and is stuck in like hasn't come to grips with adulthood and blah 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 blah, breaks up with the guy she's been with forever, like what was me, she ends up, you know, falling in love with a mermaid, and then the mermaid tries to drown her, you know, like totally normal stuff. Totally normal. It was interesting. It was a fun time. I would read stuff by that author again, but it was a good time. So that'll be in the reading vlog. You'll get more on that. This book, Tampa, we're not talking about this anymore. This book is terrible, awful, should be burned. Alyssa Nutting needs her brain looked at. And all the trigger warnings, never read that book. Don't pick up that book. I did you all a disservice. Never read this book. Just don't. Did I make it clear? Don't read that book. Don't. Ever. Next, I read The Roanoke Girls, which follows this family of the Roanoke girls. They all have this grandfather that everybody's like in love with, and all the girls kind of look the same. I think you know where I'm going with this. The girls are all like a little bit, there's something not quite right with them. A lot of them die or run away or go missing. And our main character, her mom ends up like killing herself when she's really young. She has to go back to like the family home in, I think West Virginia. Where are they from? In rural Kansas. And she lives there for a little bit with like her cousin. And then she moves away. She like goes away one day and she doesn't come back until her cousin goes missing. And then she's back at the family home, and all the secrets start to come out, and there is a little bit of a rekindling of love, and it's uncomfy, but after reading Tampa, like, it's nowhere near as uncomfy as Tampa, but it was good. I did not dislike that book, but it wasn't like, it wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't too bad. Read Winter's Bone, which is one of Jennifer Lawrence's first films, I guess, actually. And it was alright. Her dad kind of goes missing, and he owes some bad guys money or something like that. Oh, he skipped bail, right? So there's bondsmen looking for him, and they're down in the Ozarks, and it's really, Ozarky. Hollywood Ozarks. So it's like people living in trailers, everybody's on crystal meth. It's a little intense. But she's got this mom who's totally nuts and doesn't really do anything. She takes care of the mom. She's got like 2 younger brothers. She takes care of the brothers. She really just does everything, redoes everything. But what's happening is she's going to lose her home. She's going to lose everything if she can't prove that her dad is dead. That's the only way she can keep everything. So this whole thing is trying to find her dad. She either has to find him or prove he's dead. And that's the only way that she can keep her life together. And it's her journey to like figuring that out, and there's a lot that happens, and she's incredibly strong. And I kind of like the way the women in the book kind of come together. There's these other women that live in the area where she lives that kind of come together to help her. They don't come till the very end, but they kind of come together to help her, I guess because they see everything that she's actually going through and how much she is fighting to protect her brothers and her family and her life, and how many people are just shitty around her. And it was good. It was an interesting read. I wonder if people from the Ozarks really like being characterized as just like hicks who cook and do crystal meth. But if you're somebody from the Ozarks, please tell me how you feel, because it seems a little bit cliche and mildly insulting, but the book was good. And the last thing that I read, it was Parfum, which is a translated work from German, and it was a movie as well. I read the book previously, and I've seen the movie previously, but I'm rereading it for this particular reading vlog that I'm doing, and it's a really good book. It is weird. The translation is really good, but it's a weird book. It is about a murderer. I think the subtitle is a story of a murderer or something like that, or the history of a murderer. And this kid who is clearly a sociopath, but has like really good sense of smell, and becomes this expert perfumer in, I think it's 18th century France. And it's just a bizarre story, because he ends up trying to create the perfect scent, which involves murdering people, and he just wants to make a scent that makes everybody love him. And it's a love that is as obsessive as his pursuit of these women to create this perfume. It is a very interesting book. It is weird and not for everybody, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it the first time I read it. I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed this. I'm weird, so it's fine. And that was everything I read. in April, and I don't know how I'm gonna do this in May if I actually hit 50. I've almost read as many books in May, and it's May 12th today, 11th today, 11th or 12th. I've almost read as many books as I did in April as of in the first 14, 12, 10 days, whatever of. Anyway, I don't know what I'm saying. I need to go call my brother back because I don't know what the heck he wanted. He never calls me. I hope you guys are enjoying the microphone and me being so bougie and like legit. But yeah, that's everything I read. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. You can see more of my thoughts on some of these reading vlogs, and I've got some other stuff coming as I go on a little road trip in a few days. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you've made it this far, leave down below. Fancy. Oh, hop on and say hi. I really appreciate you guys being here, and I'll see you in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Bye.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go come closer next to me, trying to find another way to say